The pest of interest that our group chose was deer. Deer are found throughout more than 2/3 of California and are one of the state's most popular game animals. Deer are a major pest problem in both residential and ag settings. They can be destructive to home gardens, landscape plants, orchards, vineyards, and row crops. Deer populations may be declining in some areas of California. However, they have become more of a nuisance to suburban areas. This is because of the resources us humans provide them. There is less predation in these settings and more food, such as lawns, landscapes, and agricultural crops. There are two native species of deer in California, the mule deer and the Columbian black-tailed deer. Mule deer can be found along the eastern side of the San Joaquin Valley throughout the Sierra Nevada range and foothills. These deer tend to migrate according to season and food availability. The other native species to California is the Columbian black-tailed deer. These deer can be found along the central coast, as far south as San Luis Obispo, and all the way up into Oregon. They are the more popular deer that are seen around our area and that local growers will have to deal with as a pest. As you can see, a Columbian black-tailed deer will have a distinct black tail with no white. A mule deer will have a white rump patch and a small white tail with a black tip. Here's a photo of a mule deer in the wild. Bucks can weigh 150 to 200 pounds, and some may even exceed 300. Does are noticeably smaller than bucks, ranging from 100 to 150 pounds at maturity. Here's a photo of a black-tailed deer in the wild. Deer are browsers. They eat semi-woody materials. Terminal and lateral buds are their favorite. Grasses, fruits, nuts, vines, and garden vegetables. Deer will make very distinct grazing lines. They usually graze in the late evening to very early morning. However, deer that are used to human activity are very active during the day as well. Deer are related to elk, goats, and sheep. Like all three of these animals, they are ruminants, which means they have 4 stomach chambers and have the ability to regurgitate chewed food. Deer reproduction. Mating occurs in the fall when does come into estrus. Does remain in estrus for about 24 hours and will cycle every 28 days. Once pregnant, the gestation period is about 7 months, with fawns being born in the spring, and will remain with mothers until autumn when they are weaned. Either 1 or 2 fawns can be born. In good years with abundant food, lots of twins can be born as well. The doe and fawn remain secluded for about a week to 10 days before the fawn is strong enough. Deer are polygamous, which means one male, multiple females. Males fight for the right to mate with females. Young bucks are not allowed to participate. Dominance is largely a function of size and the larger male possesses. Bucks have a 6th sense, which allows them to analyze a doe's urine to tell whether she is in heat or not. Deer will live in habitats that have a combination of early-stage plant growth and extensive shrub growth. They also need vegetation and landforms that provide hiding cover and access to water. Deer are extremely adaptable, and migration is in their nature, so that means more frequent encounters as we encroach upon their natural habitat. This photo was taken by the San Luis Obispo Regional Airport, and these deer clearly had no problem with cars passing by on the road. Some signs of deer activity are their hoof prints. They have 2 hooves that form somewhat of an upside-down heart shape. When they run, they bound in a motion called slotting, where all 4 hooves push off the ground at the same time. Deer can reach speeds up to 45 miles per hour for short periods. Another sign of deer activity would be the droppings. Deer scat usually looks like bullet-shaped pellets that have an indentation on one end and a point on the other. The droppings are usually small and clustered. Deer can cause extensive damage to agricultural crops. Particular damage to crops can include stunting the growth of newly planted crops, which happened recently to the Cal Poly cornfield. This heavy consumption can lead to significantly lower crop yields. As far as vertebrate damage goes, Deer contribute to about 58% of that crop damage. Deer can also completely trample crops, including leafy vegetables, ground covers, and flowers, for example. During the summer, bucks rub their antlers on tree trunks to remove their shedding velvet. While they tend to do this on bigger trees, and it's usually not a problem, they can do it on saplings or small limbs, which can be an issue in a tree production or landscape setting. Deer can also ruin urban landscapes, as seen in many areas around the Cal Poly campus. This image is an example of some campus deer damage. This, in particular, is called skirting. The deer ate all the leaves that were in reach and then just moved on to the next bush. The damage caused by deer can be expensive. Throughout the United States, deer have caused about $2 billion of damage annually. 100 million of that is associated to agriculture. Deer can also cause damage when hit by motor vehicles. The estimated cost resulting from deer and car collisions every year is nearly $1 billion. There are a few management practices that are effective for deer. One management strategy for deer includes hunting. Deer are classified as game animals and can only be taken during specific hunting seasons with the appropriate license and deer tags. The Department of Fish and Wildlife has different zones throughout the state which have different hunting regulations. San Luis Obispo is located in Zone A. For example, in 2021, the archery season for deer opened on July 10th and closed on August 1st. The general hunting season opened August 14th and closed September 26th. Deer are the most popular game animal in California, contributing to nearly $450 million annually to the California economy. Hunting allows for population control, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife will increase or decrease the number of tags available depending on the population size. When verifiable damage is occurring to crops or other resources, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife has authority to issue a depredation permit to allow the lethal removal of deer. Here is a photo that Sammy and Caleb took of deer on the scene at the Pro-Am golf tournament. Exclusion is another highly effective management method. This usually involves putting up fencing. The fence needs to be tall enough to keep the deer from jumping over the fence. Deer, when threatened, can jump over an 8-foot fence. Therefore, a fence should be at least that tall. Fences that are angled or outward sloping typically work best. A good deer fence is built to work in both directions. If an animal gets in, you need to have a way to get the deer out without difficulty. Electric fences are also effective at keeping deer out and are less costly to put up, but require routine maintenance and monitoring. Fencing has a high initial investment, but with good maintenance practices, it can definitely pay off in the long run. Some other management practices include behavioral manipulation. Scaring a deer away by shooting a paintball gun or flying a drone can get the job done. Guardian dogs can also be used to chase deer off. If rattled enough, the deer will just move on to another area. This is a photo of deer hanging out on campus at the ITRC. Caleb is going to discuss how deer are excluded from the Cal Poly orchards. Here, a fencing system is the most reasonable and effective approach because this agricultural area is right next to a riparian area.
As discussed in the video, exclusion is probably your best bet for deer management. So we're out here at the Cal Poly avocado field by the deciduous orchard, as this is a really good example of a deer fence. Good deer fencing is placed in the proper location. This is right next to a riparian area along Stenner Creek, and deer love to be in the riparian areas. It's close to water and there is a lot of cover when they need it, and a lot of vegetation, as we can see here. So this is in a very good position. This is at the proper height as well. You want to fence about 8 feet. Deer can jump about 6 feet. 8 feet's kind of a protective measure, and as well as we have the barbed wire on top. It's also low enough to the ground where the deer can't really dig or try to crawl underneath the fence. While this is very expensive, it is an upfront payment that pays off in the long run. But a good fence is only as good as its weakest link. As we can see here, the gate, if left open, or it is a little bit shorter, it doesn't have the barbed wire on top, deer can get in, especially if it's left open. So a good fence needs to have some way for the deer to get back out. You could leave the gate open and try to shoo them back out, but ideally you'd have some sort of step system that goes high enough so the deer can jump back over and they won't get back in.
These next few photos were taken by Sammy. There was a deer that knew its way into this Utah hotel lobby for some sugar packets. Deer can be a problem because there is occasionally competition for resources between mule deer and livestock on the range, especially in the spring and early summer. Additionally, deer can transmit hoof and mouth disease to the livestock and vice versa. They also harbor ticks, which are a concern to human health. Long-term population trends have been in steady decline since the 1960s and 1970s. This is because of human encroachment and wildfire, both of these reducing the quality and quantity of deer habitat. Short-term fluctuations in deer populations are attributed to weather events affecting the availability of resources. Density of deer can range. For example, one deer on 10 to 30 square miles of desert versus dozens of deer on just 1 square mile where resources are more abundant. Deer are adapted to fire. Therefore, even large disturbances will only affect a few hundred deer at most. $25 million is generated in tag sales for the taking of deer. However, the Department of Fish and Wildlife focuses on biology to control the deer population. Tags are mainly given out for bucks, but does are occasionally hunted for improved resource management. The Department of Fish and Wildlife will even work with private landowners and timber companies for deer habitat management. As you can see, there is a way to enjoy these beautiful animals in the wild while managing them in a humane way to minimize the economic damage to agriculture and other aspects of urban life. These populations are in healthy numbers throughout California, and effective management ensures a balance of wildlife and human interactions.